Salutations everyone, it is Matty here today with my review for We Happy Few. A big thanks to Evolve PR for getting the review copy in a week before the launch date because as always it's super helpful for content creators like myself. We Happy Few is a game that was kickstarted by over 7,000 people, was picked up by Gearbox's publishing division, suffered a delay, and also a change in design as they pivoted from a survival focus to a 20-hour narrative experience. As someone who played the game in its early access stage back in 2016 and paid attention to the news cycle, I looked forward to the release of this one. So, will you need to pop a joy to have a good time with We Happy Few, or does it stand tall as a sleeper hit? Let's hold X to inspect and find out. The conventional route for my reviews is to fire things up with the story, but in order to properly have a grasp on my story complaints, you'll need to know how this game is structured. We Happy Few is similar in design to an expansion I reviewed earlier in the year called Prey Mooncrash. By this, I mean that We Happy Few has a world that is procedurally generated to make up the terrain, housing positions, loot, and dig spots, but there are also areas that are handcrafted by the developer for questing and story purposes. The game clearly takes heavy inspiration from BioShock through its HUD, pastel-like art style, utopian society gone wrong, and promo videos from Uncle Jack that are similar to the propaganda scattered throughout Rapture, but the gameplay aspect is on a totally different wavelength. Considering this started out as a survival game, which is a mode that is actually going to be dropping after launch now, you must account for your hunger, dehydration, sleep, and other potential status debuffs. While if they are not tended to, they don't kill you as in other survival titles, they do reduce your max stamina, health, or sprint speed, which I found to be a fair balance of things, not overbearing but worth keeping in mind. However, over time, it transforms into something not really worth worrying about since food hardly weighs anything, and even eating something as small as a carrot can satisfy not eating for days. Plus, there is the early character upgrade that lets you eat rotten food without consequence, so the skill tree pretty much filters out all the survival mechanics over time, which is what leveling up is pretty much about, making the game easier and giving the player less to worry about and more to have fun with. Yes, We Happy Few has a skill tree that consists of sections for survival, stealth, combat, and protagonist-specific upgrades that make each of the 3 playable characters you take control of feel unique, or at least they try to. They feel very much the same, and the only differences brought to the table were incredibly frustrating ones. One character was, quote, bad with people, end quote, so I had to spend the entire third act of the game running away from people trying to kill me. Another character has a story-specific mechanic that requires you to return home to complete a task, we'll call it, that I won't spoil. If you don't do it, you are hit with a burden of guilt, aka your inventory space is cluttered with an imaginative weight. Now, while I thought this was a cool idea, that did end up leading to a 300-meter walk to a store that I needed items from to complete said task, taking me 15 minutes because I had so much guilty weight on me. Sure, I'd love to drop all my items, but if you're not wearing a specific outfit, the people in the town get upset and attack you for not abiding by their rules. This is one of the major problems that practically ruins We Happy Few. The mechanics are constantly in a tug of war, and you're able to blatantly see a title that had a pivot mid-development. Anyway, as you complete random quests or story-based ones, you will earn skill points that you're able to dump into the respective trees, and you're also randomly rewarded crafting recipes that have zero connection to about 95% of the stories told in-game. What I'm saying is you'll meet a character for a story setup moment, and because you did that, you'll get 3 points and a recipe for berserk darts. You know, why not? It is strange that there's this disassociation between gameplay and story, but that's me being nitpicky. At either the chemistry station or the crafting table, you can slap together dozens of combinations of wizardry. Maybe you want to craft some pills to massively increase the sprint speed of your character, or a brick with a ton of spikes on it to knock the cap off of Bobby and maybe give him a scraper too. It was swell having new toys to mess around with, both in a lethal or non-lethal fashion, even though there weren't repercussions for either path in the story. Traveling in We Happy Few is another major issue that surfaced in the circus known as the second act. My game glitched and I wasn't notified where hatches were, which are used as the game's fast travel system. So alongside the burden of guilt, which was something I managed to permanently remedy, I had to run thousands of meters to and fro in the game's world. Considering the world is procedurally generated, it wasn't like I could feel my way around regions like Maidenholm, which immediately looked and felt samey after the sizzle of the color-flooded streets wore off. This ultimately made questing drawn out and put a spotlight on one of the many tech errors I had experienced. Falling out of the sky? Check. Audio completely disappearing? Yep. How about poor PC performance? Well, there's that too. Furthermore, there are quests that take place in the city, but you're not allowed to be out at night. Sometimes you'll start a quest in the day and end up coming out at night. It's not really your fault at all, and you'll start being chased by guards, which is a common theme in the game. You're always being chased by someone, I feel. That is until you get a mandatory stealth upgrade allowing you to sprint in the city and be out at nighttime. But that's after many hours of frustration. I was tremendously irritated with what I was playing if you weren't aware. The sections that developer compulsion games handcrafted and designated purely for storytelling were legitimately well done. I liked them and was intrigued. I would kill to see them do a game that isn't procedurally generated. However, the twinkles of glory in the narrative are quickly snuffed out by bugs, gameplay imbalance, crafting quests that put you at the mercy of an RNG system, and 1,000,001 people trying to chase and kill me even when I'm following the game's rules with disguises. Now that you have an idea of what's happening in the game's world on a technical and mechanical level, let's get to the narrative. The premise for We Happy Few is an enticing one that has a shot to resonate with all gamers. It begs the question, what if with the pop of a pill you could be rid of depression, anxiety, traumatic experiences, or something that you wish you could just forget? If all it took to put a smile on your face from a day-to-day basis was simply this one pill.
You are off your joy.
As someone who struggled with anxiety in the past, I was actually marveled by the concept, and the 180 to a narrative focus had me jazzed, as it gives the developers a chance to bring to life a very unique universe. Now, the plot does start off in a puzzling fashion, as the game constantly refers to characters, events, and more in the world that gradually builds around you. You'll likely spend the first 2 to 3 hours getting your bearings and being pretty damn confused. This shines a spotlight on the story's poor pacing, because it does manage to eventually explain pretty much every question you would have throughout the entire story, but getting there with the aforementioned issues makes it a long road to go down. Fortunately, what story is here that you do experience is actually pretty good. I liked each of the protagonists, but primarily Arthur, likely due to the amount of screen time he had to be fleshed out. He's awkward, he's super flawed, he has a lot of oddities, but that makes him charming to me. He's not some superhero who channels all his negative emotions into a positive outlet. I felt he managed to stand out, and despite the issues I have with the gameplay when it comes to Acts 2 and 3, the stories there are also solid. Learning why joy exists, who created it, what happened to Wellington Wells, what's beneath the mask, and many more secrets was gripping when it was there. But don't get me wrong, you must work through 100 yards of BS to get to that one small patch of green grass. The narrative also heavily relies on the in-game notes, which brings a lot of clarity to both the characters and the world. It desperately needs organization, as key story details that aren't mentioned at all can be mixed with random collectibles that a lot of players could miss without a single clue. And last, we have audio. From the crackling, muffled voice of Uncle Jack airing on the TVs around the world to music customized specifically for the game, it rocks. I feel all the main voice actors managed to reprise their roles quite well as they hit the emotional high points, managed to bring life to scenes that could otherwise be dull. And like I said, Arthur's awkward nature really just had me with a smirk on my face most times he was in a cutscene, because you never knew what he was actually going to do. Footsteps in the title are oddly loud enough that I actually wanted to point it out in the audio section. And this is also a good point to reiterate that there were audio bugs that fully cut out voice lines from the game. In order to get things working again, I simply have to reboot the game, and fortunately, this did not occur during any major story moments. And now it's time for my verdict on We Happy Few. I also want to say that I tried my best to keep my finger on the pulse of the We Happy Few community in the terms of their reviews in progress. I know this game has changed quite a bit from its early access reveal to now at its point of a full game. I don't want folks out there to think I'm not a fan of certain changes, because their focus on a narrative actually is what makes this game redeemable. It's just the gameplay augmentations that are desperately needed. The survival mechanics did not catch me off guard. It's not like the game was too hard. It's just that it felt it was collapsing underneath the weight of unbalanced mechanics. Ultimately, I'm going to say that this is one you wait for a very deep sale on, or you ultimately pass entirely, which hurts me to say because I was really jazzed for this game. But look, man, it just does not run well technically. The title's always fighting with itself. You'll spend easily 70% of your game running away from a massive crowd of enemies trying to kill you. Even if you are attempting to do full stealth, you're really hiding in the shadows from your enemy. You're crawling in the bushes as often as possible. Sometimes the AI is wonky, sees you when it shouldn't have, hears you when it shouldn't have, and vice versa. Sometimes it doesn't see you whatsoever when it really should have. The game becomes largely unpredictable, and like I said, you'll find yourself running for the hills many times over. Like I said, it's always fighting over itself, man, and there's a lot of good stuff here. The story's good, the voice acting's good, the universe is great, the art style is just eye-catching. Everything that you see at face value that you imagine to be good is good. It's the gameplay that really crumbles underneath the weight of this wonderful universe, thus stripping away what could have been one of this year's best adventures. So that is my review for We Happy Few. If you guys have any questions, do fire away in the comments down below. I will try my best to get to you guys and answer as many as possible. Other than that, be sure to follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook, and if you enjoy these types of reviews, maybe I saved you a buck or two through these reviews. If I did so, do consider going to my Patreon, as it fuels all the content we create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.